Cool.
We're live.
We're live. We're live in the studio.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline Johnson. I'm Signups Content and Community Manager. Welcome back to the Sign Up Videocast series. Today, I'm here with Andrew Shotland to do a little bit of a 2024 vibe check for everything local SEO, multi-location SEO, local search. The past few years have been seeing some insane changes and developments, and Andrew is an expert. He is literally the local SEO guide. So I'm very excited to hear his take on, everything. Yeah, Andrew, how about you kick us off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, a little bit about how you got into the industry and what you've been up to lately.
Sure. So thanks for having me. I'm the CEO of Local SEO Guide. We pseudo rebranded as LSG SEO, mostly because no one can ever remember our name. Even our clients, like they call us, oh, local, like, oh, talk to local. I'm like, okay, we need to be able, and we call ourselves LSG. So anyhow, Local SEO Guide, we're a full service SEO agency. We do all the things that SEO agencies do. We have a specialty in multi-location businesses. I got into this business because in 2003, I helped start a company called Insider Pages, which was an early version of Yelp. Had no idea what SEO was and kind of figured it out. And then we became one of the fastest growing websites in the world because not many people were doing SEO at that point. That enabled us to raise a lot of money from venture capitalists, which enabled us to hire a lot of people. We decided to redesign our website because it looked like a startup website. And I didn't know what I didn't know about technical SEO. And overnight, we lost about 5 million monthly users because of a glitch I could probably figure out in about 5 seconds today. Long story short, I got fired. And I happened to be having drinks with the head of the Los Angeles Times website that day. And he was all excited because he was redesigning his website. And I said, oh, what are you doing about SEO? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, let me tell you what happened to me today. And he freaked out and said, oh, can I hire you as a consultant? And that was like 19 years ago. And here I am.
That's history. That's so fun. I feel like that's a pretty common story I've been hearing, is that people get into this thing because they're, trying to figure it out for themselves. And then they just figure out, oh, this is fun and I'm good at this, and nobody else knows anything about this.
Well, back then it was kind of like that. It was definitely Wild West, and there were websites and stuff that talked about it, but for the most part, it wasn't very common. And but today it's so different because every marketers are generally much more well versed in the basics of SEO. I'd say it's like, if exaggeration, but let's say there were 1,000 people in 2003 who you could call SEO expert. I think there's like 100,000 now, something like that. So it's been democratized a bit.
That's very true. That's very true. So like, how, since it seems like everybody has their little SEO expert in their pocket, how do you keep it going? How do you differentiate yourself?
It's my favorite question because we get asked by prospects often, like, I'm talking to 3 different SEO companies. Why are you different? And I say, I have no idea. I've never worked with those guys. I don't know what they do.
That's very true. This is a sales call now, so
yeah. Well, that's how I am. And so I think the reason why I like to actually tell people that I lost my job to SEO is because I think maybe what differentiates us, and this might just be marketing hype talking, is we are supremely empathetic to people who have to trust this channel to like do their job.
Right.
We've seen people lose their jobs because of SEO things that went south. And so we take it, it's not like we're curing cancer here, but we take it seriously. But it's also ridiculous. This is the most ridiculous marketing channel ever. So I think what maybe differentiates us is our experience. We've worked on pretty much every type of website, some of the biggest sites in the world. And then just our point of view on the whole thing. I think unfortunately, there's a lot of people who do SEO that it's okay if you don't know what you're doing, kind of like, because half of SEO is kind of guesswork, but
Right.
but the guesswork part is based on experience. And we get a lot of clients from people who've had SEO agencies, and I don't know what they're doing all day long. I don't think they're doing anything, right? Or and so I think what differentiates us is we try not to be that kind of an agency,
Mhm.
and maybe we succeed. I don't know. People seem to like it. I don't know.
No, I feel like that's a great point. Like people do lose their jobs or gain huge success based on SEO, and like having that background where you can be more sympathetic, more empathetic towards that is definitely gives you a huge leg up. And then also, yeah, I feel like it must be hard if you're on the other side of things to choose someone who's going to manage something that is often very much a long game and you can't really tell what's happening. Like I've spoken to um, some other some agency owners, and they'll always have these stories about these customers who had been paying crazy amounts of money for years, and then it turned out that the agency wasn't doing anything because it's
Yeah, it's tricky because it's not like let's say pay per click, which is
Mm,
I just need you to pay me and I can get you clicks. Like you almost don't have to do too much. It's exaggerating, but like the client doesn't have to do too much, right?
right.
Whereas here it's like, we need to do stuff to your website, right? Oh, and we need, yeah, like 5 different teams to buy into this thing, right?
Mhm.
And prioritize it above something else. And it's slightly more complicated. And so you can get into situations where, like, we have some clients right now that are kind of stagnant. Like
Mhm.
they're because the fix to make things work is really hard.
Right.
And so, they'll be like, hey, we want to hire you to do SEO. And then in month 1, we're like, okay, here are the things you need to do. Well, I don't know. Let's talk about this next quarter, right? So that often happens. But we see just as much where, especially small business, where they kind of outsource their SEO and they don't really pay attention. They just assume
Mhm.
everything's fine. And until they know, oh, it's probably not doing anything, but whatever, I've got other things to do, and it's not the highest priority. And then 6 months later, they wonder why it's not working. And
Right.
and it's partly because the agency wasn't being effective, but also just as likely that the client wasn't creating the space for an agency to succeed. Uh,
Mhm.
so whatever, it's marketing. It's tricky.
Exactly. Yeah. How do you like when you're consulting for people, how do you sort of convince them to make space for it?
How do we convince them? Well, we try to show them data. So as an example, we're working with a small business right now. It's a HVAC company, air conditioning type stuff, and they're crushing it.
Mhm.
They get a ton of traffic. They're in a city in the Midwest. And I was like, they're like, we think our SEO is actually doing pretty well, but the business isn't doing well. We don't know what's going on. And and I looked at their data and I said, they're in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And so I filtered their SEO traffic by showing only people in Indiana. And about 98% of the traffic disappeared
Oh no.
because they had an agency that was trying to get them ranked for what we call national content.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with national content. It can, like, I don't know, how to know your water heater's broken or something. Um, but it's not going to be effective at conversion because it's so broad.
Right.
So, so these guys were probably doing some kind of playbook that they do for everybody instead of going, oh, how do I get this guy leads? Right. And so we try to be pretty thoughtful about that,
Mhm.
right? I don't think we're the only people like that, but we we try to be very data driven, very like blunt. like we'll tell you if your baby's ugly. And I find most clients like that. They're not people, especially smaller businesses, they don't have pride of ownership of their website or anything like
Right.
that. They just think it's this necessary evil.
Yeah.
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 So we're like, yeah,
That's
your
true.
website sucks. Like, sorry. They're like, yeah, I know.
Sometimes a little harsh truth is definitely necessary. That's interesting. I feel like it's an interesting story about the HVAC company. I feel like that seems like a pretty common thing, is that like people don't always necessarily have awareness of how necessary doing local SEO is for
Well,
a
it's a hard problem, right? So yeah, you should have how to tell your water heater is broken content. That'd be great
Mhm,
to have that there, but that's not a local search. And the types of content that will meet the needs of a local search is pretty limited. Like
mhm,
water heater repair person near me, right? So so you've got to figure out the right balance, which
right.
I don't have a magic formula for. It's just like, let's look at the data and go, what's showing up locally, and do we need to spend, create 100 pieces of content for you that are like very broad, the top of funnel type stuff? Do you have the budget for that? Wouldn't you rather us just create like two,
Mhm,
something uh, like, well, we'd love to create 100 pieces of content. That's more money for us,
right.
uh, but it may not be the best investment.
That makes sense. So how do you, when you're dealing with these local SEO, like these local or these like multi-location businesses, how do you, obviously there's not one set formula, but what's your general approach and strategy there?
Well, for a multi-location business, it's much different than
Right.
a like a one or two location company. Um, a multi let's just say 50 locations or more. I'm making that up. Um, but a multi-location business is much more like uh, it's a much more technical and content-driven thing than a smaller guy.
Right.
Is they should have the water heater page and everything, because they can support that content with 50 locations or whatever. Um, uh, in their case, it's usually like, how do we create a structure on the website that makes it easy for Google to find all this stuff?
Mhm.
And then how do we have, like, what kind of pages do we need? So as an example, actually, this is for single locations too. Trying to think of a good one. Like we're working with a veterinary, a new veterinary, like six veterinary locations that are launching,
Mhm.
and they only want to have one, and it's attached to a national brand. So they only want to have 6 location pages. Let's just say in Fort Wayne, Indiana,
Right.
would be one. And we're like, well, we looked at all the data, and so sure, for veterinarian Fort Wayne, yeah, let's just have one page. But when we looked at the data, when people search for a rabies vaccine for their dog, uh, the vaccination local landing page shows up 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
That's a signal that you need to make a vaccination local page. So Fort Wayne / vaccinations type page.
Mhm.
And so you've got to do that research to see what's working in Google, and then figure out how to apply that at scale across 50 locations.
Mhm.
For a single location, we look at that stuff too, but usually their site is generally like, it's pretty simple. It's like, here's my
Mhm.
services, here's my about us. That's it. Here are the service areas we service, if they're a service area business. So if they serve multiple service areas, we're probably going to want to figure out a page strategy for every service area. For all of their main services, we probably want to have a landing page for that. And they're always localized, like water heater repair in Fort Wayne.
Right.
And then we're going to want to look at each page and make sure it's sending the right signal to Google. It's a much
Mhm.
more page by page thing than, say, 50 locations, which is like, we're just create a template and we're going to do this across everything. And we're not going to like micromanage every little page. Um, We might over time, but so it's the only difference with the single location is like the scale of the content usually, and but other than that, it's pretty similar.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. How do you feel like the multi-location SEO game has changed since you first started?
Well, I think it's Google is hoarding more of the traffic, right? So they've made the interface and the maps and stuff harder for a user to click to the website,
Right.
which isn't so bad, like, because maybe they just wanted the driving directions or they just wanted to call. But it makes proving effectiveness harder because you have to use the Google business profile data, which is kind of junky data. And so it's not easy to go, oh, here's what happened, right? And like you're like, oh, our map impressions went way up. I'm like, so what? Right? What does that mean? I think that's the number one thing that's changed over the last several years. But again, like as I said at the onset, like the knowledge about this stuff is so much greater across businesses these days that I find most of the time now we're not solving like basic problems anymore.
Oh, interesting. Like what types of things?
Well, as an example, hey, link from your Google business profile to the appropriate location page. That would be something like 5 years ago, no one had that set up, right? And be like an easy win. Because when you do that, it improves the relevance of your Google business profile. So we don't see that as much anymore. Now we're much more looking at like with a multi-location, especially like, hey, we have 300,000 landing pages and only 1,000 of them get traffic. What do we do? Right? Like that kind of stuff there's not an easy answer. You have to have a process. Most businesses wouldn't even know where to start to figure that out. So that's where idiots like me come in and be like, oh, I think I know how to do that.
No, it definitely takes like a certain type of like tactician problem solving mind to sort of wade through the SEO, the local, like the search problems. Cause yeah, not everybody knows what to do when you have a bunch of pages, but not all of them are ranking necessarily. What would you do in that scenario?
Well, in this case, the one I'm thinking of, the CEO of this 1,000 location retailer got into SEO like 10 years ago, but he got like an inch deep. And so he just started copying things and he saw it was great and it really worked. But over the last several years, it stopped working because, so as an example, he had 300,000, he has 1,000 retail outlets. So let's say 1,000 cities, but let's just say that I can't remember the exact number. Let's say there's 300,000 cities in the US. So he had a page for every city, even where he didn't have locations. And his thinking was, oh, I can point people towards the nearest location in the next city over, which isn't a bad idea necessarily. Problem is that I don't know, people probably didn't find that very useful. So, and there's not a lot on the content on those pages, so they weren't getting indexed very well. They were getting no traffic. Google wasn't really crawling them anymore. So there are all these signs that either we need to make these a lot better, or we need to get rid of them because they're not doing anything for you. They're distracting Google. They may be hurting you. In fact, Google came out with this helpful content update last year, and they said that part of that algorithm looks at the totality of your site. And if your site stinks on one side, it's going to affect the other side. And so 300,000 URLs on a, let's just say 500,000 URL website, that's the majority of their URLs. And so they're worthless. And so, yeah, let's get rid of those that's how we'd go about it. Or, hey, do you want to improve these? And no one ever wants to improve them because that would cost money. And so let's just get rid of them.
Yeah. That's something interesting. I've been seeing a lot of people talk about like given the helpful content update, people like when ChatGPT first started becoming something that people used more regularly to write content. A lot of people were like, this is like once Google realizes this, people with articles from AI tools are going to be like plummeted to the bottom of search. What is your take and experience with things like that?
So we've been pretty bullish on AI. We first got into AI because a client, pretty big brand, hired us because they had hired someone else to generate like 1,000 pages of content with AI, and they all tanked.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I love AI. Like, I'll redo those pages for you. Like, happy to do that. And so anyhow, we started experimenting with AI pages, and what we found is that, yeah, sometimes like if it's a kind of a junky page, like, yeah, it doesn't work very well. And Google definitely over the last 6 months has gotten stricter in its indexation restrictions, I guess. So it's much harder to get new content indexed at scale.
Right.
But we found that if you have a decent process for AI content, it's fine. It works just fine. So you have to have a human being involved. Like you can't just. We had one client who said, "Oh, I think this AI stuff is going to crush it. Can I just pay you to like crank out AI articles, and then let's revisit it and see how it does like 2 months later?" We're like, okay, I don't think it's going to do very well. Yeah, it didn't do very well because we put no editorial
Right.
like process in. We just said, okay, how do I fix a water heater? Please, ChatGPT, and here it is. And okay, we put it up.
Right, exactly. What do you think is like a more ideal process from your experience now after a bit of using these tools?
Well, we actually built our own tool because we're fancy like that. So we think the way to do it is a super high level. So first of all, you approach the content like you would approach any SEO thing. You do an SEO research. So basically, okay, I want to rank for this thing. I want this page to rank for this thing. We look at what are the pages that are ranking for that thing, and we train our model on that. We're like, write a page like that, right? And we'll do all of the normal SEO brief stuff. Oh, this should, like a page about a water heater should have the word temperature in it, right? Or something like that. And these questions and that kind of thing. Then we'll basically chunk up the page using AI. So we won't say write a whole page. We'll be like, write 3 sentences. Write 3 sentences about this. And once that, so the prompting can take a little time to get right. And then once that's right, we give it to a human being to read it and say, okay, how can we make it better? And if it's not good enough, we'll send it back and try new prompts. If it is good enough, then we send it to the client and say, will you publish this? They'll look at a few of them and say, okay, these look good. At that point, we'll start to scale it. We'll hit the make one of these for every city, please, and change it this way and that way. We like doing this mostly for pages that don't require like huge expertise. Like a location page is a perfect one. It's not doesn't have to be Shakespeare, right? A service page is a perfect one for a local service. When we're getting into really high-end concepts, like how do I do analytics on, while being HIPAA compliant type thing like that, we're probably not going to use AI for.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I like the process. That's a really good way of doing it. Yeah, like doing it bit by bit and going kind of like through the same process that you would if you were the one writing it instead of a tool.
Yeah. So the tool we built just uses all these different AI tools and houses it in one spot. So a content strategist can go in and just build it themselves and not have to like do fancy engineering or something like that.
I also did see on your website that you have the AI SEO training, and I would love to hear a little bit about that.
So we get asked by our clients and other agencies sometimes, like for advice on AI stuff, because everyone's kind of feeling their way around in the dark, and some people know we do it. And so we've made our machine learning engineer, Jess Peck, available like just on a consulting basis. And yeah, I'd say we do every month, we do a few of those. And it's just like, hey, do you want to schedule an hour and pick Jess's brain about how to do this stuff, or do you want us to design a system for you, all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff.
That's great. I assume people have been loving it because everybody wants to learn.
It's been really great with our clients because, shocker, most of our bigger clients all have AI skunk works going on.
Right.
So these AI people don't have anyone else to talk to, right? And so it's good to get here. Oh, how did you guys do this? How did you solve this problem? That kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's great to see things like that. I know we're heading up at the end of the time. I don't know if you have to go like right.
I don't know if I do. Let me double check. No, I can do a couple more minutes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll just have like a question or two more. Yeah, I love that you guys have gone all not all in, but gone gone hard on the AI stuff because it definitely is making an impact. It's cool to see how different people in the search space have been toying around with it, playing around with it. Yeah, I'd love to know like how you go about, like, in light of these types of technological changes, how you go about deciding what to incorporate into your business and also how to change your strategy based on what's changing in the landscape.
Sure. By the way, I think there was a very small earthquake that just happened.
Oh,
Like, it felt,
dramatic.
it's very weird. Maybe not, but it certainly felt like the wall moved for a second. Anyhow, I'm sorry. What was the question while the earth was shaking?
No, yeah, no, yeah, the question was like in light of everything that's changing, like with AI, with different changes to search, with different technologies that are emerging that may or may not stay around. How do you approach like what to go all in for and what to incorporate into your general strategies and your general like business practices?
Well, AI was kind of an easy one because clients are starting to ask for it. Like, oh, do you
Right.
guys do AI? Like, so clients were like, we're like, okay, we could do all this content for you, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, like, can you do it with AI? Wouldn't it be cheaper? Like, yeah, we can do that. It probably would be cheaper, right? So, so we listen to the market, I guess. And then, yeah, I think that's mostly how we're kind of like, I don't think we're doing anything dramatically different than
Mhm.
we did 3 years ago or something. But I think, yeah, we're kind of looking at how things change and then trying to go, okay, we're also looking at, we get the benefit of seeing other agencies work sometimes. And so we also go, oh, that's a good idea. Like, maybe we
Mhm.
should do that. Or that's really bad. Like, I can't believe, like, we could do much better. Let's do it this. Here's an example. We have an e-commerce client, big brand you've heard of. Uh, they have these merchants who like sell coffee or ceiling fans or whatever on their website. And they have, since we've been working with them, which has been 8 or 9 years,
Mhm.
they have been struggling to make an SEO report for merchants.
Mhm.
So the person who runs the coffee part of the business can look and see how they're doing. And they're always hiring some company to build it, and the company can never build it. And there's always everyone always pitching them this thing, and there's a bunch of big SEO tools that tried to build it for them, and it was just sucked. And so I'm like, this isn't very hard to build. Like, this is just a list of URLs that have that are your coffee products, and the SEO data around them, and a little high level detail. Like,
Right.
it couldn't be simpler to build. So we saw that and we're like, we can build that. So we're building that for them now. Not that we're geniuses. We're just like, we're cheap. Like, we're not. We're like, you shouldn't be paying that company $500,000 to build that thing. We can build that for $500, I bet.
Right. Do it
And
on love it.
yeah. So that kind of thing. So there's opportunities there. Like one of the challenges and opportunities for us is like flexibility. We're not super rigid. We'll do, like, we have a client that sells automobiles, and they have, like, I think they said over 100,000 customer reviews on their website.
Mm,
but they've never done anything to filter the reviews to find the best ones.
right.
So they're like, can you guys create an algorithm to like figure out like what's the best reviews? And we're like, yeah, we can do that. Like, why not? Like, no one else is going to do it, so we'll do
Right.
it. So we're pretty flexible that way, and which creates a little chaos on our side, but it also makes the work interesting. Because other than that, SEO, once you start doing SEO on a regular basis, like except unless if you have these like crazy technical problems all the time, it gets kind of rote, right?
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah, for just one last question. I'm wondering if you have any like predictions perhaps on how you think search is going to continue to change, like what with all the new Google updates from like the helpful content update to AI influencing search or like taking over search itself.
Yeah, I don't have a prediction. I just have a lot of questions. Like I don't like will it? I don't know. It seems
No,
like it
it's
could.
a good question.
Uh, and what'll it look like? Like if Google went away tomorrow, what would we do for clients? Like, and then so I spend a fair amount of time trying to think about that. I can't say I've
Mm,
cracked the answer, but you still have to optimize yourself for these large language models. Um, like you need, so I wonder if what we talk about SEO is it's mostly going to become like content, which it is kind of right
mhm.
now, but it's really like, okay, how do I influence these large language models?
Yeah.
And but yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good point of view yet on how people convert from chat GPT to buying like, a plumbing service. I don't know
Mhm.
yet.
No, it'll definitely be
I,
very interesting to see.
yeah, I think I, one thing I kind of think is I'm torn between it happening really fast and happening like, you know what? I'm kind of used to the link thing. Like, and this chat GPT thing is kind of boring. Like it's kind of it numbs my mind when I see the results. But maybe people love it. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so that thank you for the excellent conversation. Thank you for coming on. This was
Sure.
great.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, Madeline.
Yeah,
Um, all right. Well, if anyone's interested in checking us out, we're at localseoguide.com or lsgseo.com. You can also find me on Twitter at localseoguide.
excellent. Yeah, go check them out.